So we're going to go right into the regional sustainability panel. And so I'd like to invite up all the participants in that panel. You guys can come on up. And I'll introduce them, and we'll kind of have a little conversation, and then we'll also throw it open to questions through Mentimeter as well. So our first panelist, I'll just get to introduce them. Our first panelist is Diana Robinson. Diana serves as the Energy Manager in Manatee County's Property Management Division. She moved to Florida to pursue a degree in alternative and renewable energy management, providing her insight into the importance and relationship between good health, sustainability, and resiliency. Diana and her county team have worked on projects that gained platinum certification from the Florida Green Building Coalition and earned honor from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And sitting to the right of Diana is Sarah Kane. Sarah manages the sustainability program for Sarasota County. In this role, she oversees sustainability improvements within government operations and the efforts to create a sustainable community across Sarasota County. Among her responsibilities and efforts, Sarah promotes energy efficiency to residents and businesses, advances sustainability improvements in county facilities and fleet operations, provides employee and community education services, and collaborates on grant management. Next up, we have Stevie Freeman-Montez, the City of Sarasota's Sustainability Manager. Stevie leads programs that conserve natural resources within city operations and collaborates closely with city planners on resiliency and sustainable development issues. Among her current responsibilities are conducting a climate change vulnerability assessment, facilitating energy efficiency upgrades for city facilities, integrating climate adaptation into the comprehensive plan, and collaborating on code improvements related to sustainability. Our next panelist is Jane Grogg. Jane has worked for Sarasota County for 18 years and is the Manager of Neighborhood Services and Long-Range Planning. Since January 2018, Jane has also managed the long-range planning team, including comprehensive planning, critical area planning, demographics, interjurisdictional planning, affordable housing, and special projects. Jane and her family love the sun, from installing PV panels and solar water heaters at home to adventuring outdoors throughout Florida. And our last panelist is Chuck Henry. Chuck has served with the Florida Department of Health since 2002, becoming the local Sarasota administrator in 2011. He previously served 24 years in the U.S. Navy, and Chuck is a member of the Florida Public Health Association and a member and past president of the Florida Environmental Health Association. He serves as advisor for Florida's age-friendly public health effort and as an advocate for age-friendly Sarasota. So let's give him all an applause. So I'm just going to start with a question for each of the panelists, and be sure to note kind of questions that you might have. Oh yeah, sure. You might need that. Good call. So let's begin with our first panelist, Diana Robinson. Diana, as the Energy Manager for Manatee County, how does your role differ, and how do you incorporate sustainability into your programs and projects?
As Energy Manager, and I've been with the county now 5 years, and when I came in, the focus for my department, which was property management, was pretty much on the amount of money spent for, what we're paying in electricity. And of course, I had that passion for energy efficiency and how we could maybe implement some renewable energy. And so as time has gone on, my job has actually evolved into more the sustainability side of it. And on a global scale, we know that sustainability is important, especially for large-scale users, which would be us in government, right? We have a lot of buildings, and buildings are a huge consumer of electricity. So, how do we incorporate these two? And so what I have to look at, and what my team has to look at, is how do we bring this value, being more sustainable, but but we still have to provide reliability and good service. And so that really does make it a challenge. So we're forever looking at ways to, through new technology, make sure we're picking good vendors to help us through with if we're doing a lighting retrofit. So there's definitely a relationship, but a little bit of difference, but not complete difference.
Great, thank you. Sarah, we talked this morning that the Office of Sustainability in Sarasota County began in 2002. Can you tell us what sustainability goals and initiatives you've been working on since then, and what new projects you've got going on right now?
Yeah, sure, thank you. So 2002 was pretty early for a sustainability office to start, and especially in our region. A lot of the offices of sustainability started with some stimulus funding around 2006-2008 period. And now you'll actually see sustainability offices in every major county and city government across the United States. So you'll find sustainability staff working on similar issues that we do. But we started in 2002, so that was really great for our leaders at that time to recognize that sustainability is very important. So we started setting goals at that time. So for the first 10 years, we set quite a few goals. In 2005, we did a green building resolution, which basically we're going to, just like Diana said, we're going to look at our buildings in the county because we have a lot of them and we use a lot of energy. And we're going to try to create our buildings to be green certified. So most of our new buildings are USGBC LEED certified buildings. Oops. And that basically means that they are going to be more energy and water efficient. So we have 13 LEED green buildings right now. We also set some green building goals for the community. So we encourage fast track permitting for green building in the community for developers that want to do that. And then in 2006, we did a roadmap to sustainability, which is like our sustainability action plan, setting some goals and actions for that. And also in 2006, we did a 2030 challenge resolution, which is also looking at our new buildings and setting a goal for our new buildings to be carbon neutral by 2030 and reducing the amount of fossil fuels that we're using. In 2008, we did an energy management action plan, and we really looked at our lighting and a lot of low-hanging fruit items that we could do to reduce our energy use. In 2008, and recertified in 2015, we were certified as a Gold Green Local Government, and that was the highest level at that time. And we have a lot of internal programs that we work on. Resiliency, we're doing an internal vulnerability assessment right now where we're looking at our county buildings and how they're going to be affected by sea level rise in the future. We also have energy conservation teams where we get together with all different departments of the county and we look at our building energy and water usage and how we can reduce that, and also our fuel usage as well. We have employee education, so we have quite a few people that work in the county, about 2,400. So I get to go, I have the privilege of meeting all of the new people that come into the county every single month. And I get to meet them at new employee orientation and talk to them about sustainability and how they can be green at work. So that's really fun. I enjoy that a lot. We also have electric vehicles in our fleet, and then we do a lot of external programs. So this is our main event. Thank you all for coming today. I really enjoy planning this workshop every year. This is our 14th annual. It's very fulfilling, a lot of work, but as you can see, we have some amazing speakers, and it's really great to bring the community together to talk about sustainability and how we can move forward in our community to do that. We also offer free classes. So we have classes on solar, electric vehicles, green living, universal design and age-friendly living, financing, and drawdown, which is a new class that Lee Hayes Byron, our director, teaches. And we also try to encourage waste reduction. So we have a sustainable events guide that will be coming out in 2020, and I'm very excited about that. You know, we do a lot of events in our community, so we want to share that with the community and internally to talk about how to reduce our waste at all of these events that we're doing. And then a couple new projects that I'm really excited about is our energy upgrade volunteer program. So we are working with low-income community members in Newtown area, and we're partnering with the Sarasota Housing Authority, and we have volunteers. We have some energy coaches here today, and they go through training to become an energy coach and learn how to do energy and water audits in homes. And we are going into these public housing units and providing upgrades for low-income community members. And this is really important because low-income community members in Sarasota County particularly are paying 12 to 19% of their income on utility bills versus median plus income folks that are paying only 2 to 3% of their income on utility bills. So we're able to go into their homes, do some upgrades, and really make a difference, actually reducing their bills. And then the last project I'm going to talk about that I'm very, very excited about, that we just started this year, actually. I can't believe it was only beginning of the year when we started Partners for Green Places. But if you were here this morning, you might have heard Gulf Coast Community Foundation talk about that. It's a partnership with the city of Sarasota and us, and the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, the Barancic Foundation, and the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. And we've got funding from all organizations to do energy and water audits for nonprofits. And so those are for human services or environmental nonprofits. And we're working with contractors and going in and doing energy assessments. And they're giving us, they're giving an energy roadmap to these nonprofits of how they can save energy and water in their buildings. And they're going to be able to take the money that they save from their electric bills being lowered and their water bills being lowered, and they're going to put that back into human services or environmental missions that they have. So that not only helps them save money, but it also increases their programming, and it helps define our sustainability goals as well that we have. So I'm very excited about that, and it's a lot. I will leave it at that.
That's a good thing. Stevie, as a sustainability manager for the city of Sarasota, you've got a unique role within local government here. Can you tell us what exactly a sustainability manager does, and give some examples of things that you're working on?
Sure. I wish I had, a little money jar every time I get the question of what exactly what do you do? I think I would be very wealthy by now, because it is such a unique role, but I'm very passionate about the professional field of sustainability positions in local government. I think it's a really important role, and I've been involved at the city of Sarasota for about 4.5 years. I was hired in 2015, and before that I was in local government sustainability in Oregon for the city of Beaverton and Washington County, Oregon, right outside of Portland. And so similar to what Sarah was saying earlier, I was hired right during the stimulus funds and really saw the profession grow and have become part of networks of this new field of professional sustainability roles in local government. And I think it's a really important role. I categorize our work at the city, and when I say our, I'm talking about myself and Jeff Redenberg here, who looks like my personal photographer right now, who work at the city, and we work on two buckets of types of projects. One is for internal operations, where we look at our city-owned assets, our buildings, our vehicles, things that we own, and how can we operate those and run those and invest in those assets in a more sustainable way with a less impact on the environment. And then we also work on community-wide initiatives and programs and policies. We operate as part of our executive staff team at the city, and so we report directly to our city manager, Mr. Barwin, that you just heard from, and we're able to really kind of operate at a level where we can, what I like to say, infiltrate other departments, and work well with public works and planning and a lot of community-wide initiatives. And some of the big projects that we're working on right now are definitely the Partners for Green Places program, which I'm so excited about, which I think really fits a niche of challenges that our nonprofit agencies have to invest in energy efficiency. But also the City Commission set a target for 100% renewable energy community-wide by 2045 and 100% renewable energy for city operations by 2030, and we have a shorter-term goal for city operations for 100% by 2024. And when they set that target, I was very excited that they set that. And it really was not just them. It was because community members packed our city commission chambers and asked them to pass that policy. And I see a lot of you here today that filled those chambers. And I see some fist pumps back there. That's great. That filled those chambers and asked for that policy to be changed. And so what that really set was a vision for our program and our department to start a year and a half long continuous planning process of identifying strategies. How feasible is that target? What's the data behind that target? What are the prioritized projects we should do to help us reach those targets? And we've had plenty of community workshops on the issue, and thank you for all of you that are here today that have been involved in that. But that's a big part of our role, has been the Ready for 100 effort. We also did a very holistic climate change vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan, where we looked at over 220 city-owned assets and identified where we were vulnerable to sea level rise, increased storm surge, precipitation, and extreme heat projections. And then we identified high-level adaptation strategies for our greatest vulnerabilities. And I presented on that last year here, I remember, at this conference. So those are two of our biggest kind of initiatives overall, but we categorize our work into climate, waste, and energy, and then education. And Jeff really does our educational initiatives, and we work on supporting Tracy Troxler and Sunshine Community Compost for neighborhood composting programs. Another fist pump back there by Tracy. But such amazing work going on by Sunshine Community Compost, and trying to do more of that work that we've heard a lot about today with compost and soils and that space. And there's a lot more work that we do, but just wanted to kind of highlight that. But also, really, I know our conversation is about regional sustainability efforts here on this panel today, and just want to call out how inspired I am by the environment of professionals and community members that collaborate on sustainability initiatives in our region. And we're part of the Science and Environment Council of Sarasota Manatee, the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition, the Climate Council, the Intergovernmental Climate Working Group. I mean, there's the Florida Sustainability Directors Network. There's a lot of just efforts of people working together to try to pull off things behind the scenes and really in the arena trying to solve problems. So I think that collaboration is really key to a lot of the issues we're talking about today, and that's about the summary I have for my work.
Great, thank you. Jane, can you give us some ideas of some of the policies that Sarasota County has adopted to plan for a sustainable future?
Yes, thank you. Sarasota County, like other counties and municipalities in the state of Florida, has a comprehensive plan. The state actually requires those municipalities to establish a guiding document like ours that talks about what we want to look like and how we want to grow. What are we going to do in the future? So it's a guiding document for all the parts of Sarasota County, and I'm going to share with you the list of 15 chapters that are in our comprehensive plan. And while I share those with you, think about how each one relates to the others, and as well how they relate to sustainability. The hint is they all do. And you know, our community is a complex system. All these things rely upon and or are affected by the others, and they include the environment, parks, preserves, and recreation, historic preservation, libraries and government facilities, schools, coastal disaster management, future land use, our 2050 resource management areas, housing, transportation, economic development, watershed management, solid waste, capital improvements, and intergovernmental coordination. Each of those chapters have an intent statement at the beginning of that talks about the direction that is being sought, or the aspirations of that, and then it's followed by the goals, objectives, and policies that guide future actions for our community. And so there are two areas that don't have their own chapter, but rather are very important threads that are woven throughout all of those chapters, and that is health and sustainability. And so it's no accident that I'm sitting next to our health official and our sustainability folks in our community. And so that section talks about how all of these pieces are important to one another, and help lead us towards the way in which we will grow going forward. A recent study that Sarah touched on that we are working on related to future policy considerations is that vulnerability assessment, looking at doing a report related to sea level rise in Sarasota County, looking at our assets that may be impacted by sea level rise. And of course, that's not just important for the future, but for right now, as those areas are oftentimes most vulnerable for our tropical storms and hurricanes and those types of things. So there's no reason to wait, of course. Let's look at those areas and see where we need to do any hardening or preparation so that we can be more sustainable in the years to come. And that report, as well as other reports and analyses that staff, both in my team and in those cross-departmental teams that work on these topics, help inform our future policy making. So data, information, analysis, what's going on, demographics in our community, that all helps inform our elected officials, who are those that set our policy, to help guide them in their thinking and provide that background for them. We've got an evaluation and appraisal report of our comprehensive plan that comes up periodically. We relook at our comprehensive plan and look for any legislative changes or those data and reports to help us inform our policy changes that may want to be considered going forward. Now, something that neighborhoods can do as it relates to these policies is our team is looking at a program called Neighborhood Pointers. These are comprehensive plan policies that have been boiled down into suggestions for potential improvements in your already built neighborhoods. And our neighborhood services team would love to talk to you and or your neighborhood about possible improvements that could be made in your neighborhood in the future, as well as inspiring ideas and inspiring others. So those pointers are a way for us to look at neighborhoods and recognize the great work that's being done, as well as look for recommendations on how that can be improved in the future. So certainly reach out if you are interested in knowing more about that or looking about those good examples. And we'd love to connect those sort of high-level goals and objectives that are in our comprehensive plan and how that really works and can work on the ground in your particular neighborhood. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Jane. Chuck, can you tell us kind of what is the role of public health and sustainability, and can you share some examples of how your Health and Human Services team is working on sustainability here in the region?
Sure, and that's probably my favorite question. What does public health have to do with sustainability? And I always go back to my roots in environmental health and talk about everything out here in the world in the natural environment that impacts everybody's health. So it could be air, it could be water, it could be natural substances, it could be man-made substances, the built environment. Everywhere we go and everything we touch has some impact, positive or negative, on our long-term health. And from a public health perspective, our main focus is on how do we improve the overall health of our population. So while we do work with individuals, our larger focus is on the broader population and how do we improve overall health. And in order to do that, we really have to stay focused not only on the natural environment and built environment, but also on social environment and the economic environment, because we know that some of those social determinants in health have a huge impact on the lifelong health and well-being of our community. You heard in the introductions, I think, my engagement with Age-Friendly Sarasota and Age-Friendly Public Health across the state of Florida. That certainly is, well, I'm interested in that, but even more so here in Sarasota County, 35, maybe 36% now of our population is over the age of 65. So as your local health official, that's a third of my population that I have to focus on. And so it becomes really important to me to think about how do we create and maintain an environment that works for our children, for our families, and for our elder adults, so that we can all thrive together intergenerationally in a community in a healthy way. I've been engaged with sustainability issues for many, many years, and whatever definition you subscribe to for sustainability, although many of them focus on the environment to begin with, they always end with because we want to keep people healthy and our community healthy. So it is keeping the world healthy, but it's also so that we can all be healthy and live long lives in this world. And so I think it's important to note when we look at advances in longevity of the human race over the last 200 years, the majority of that has been a result of what we've done in our built environment and how we've managed the environment to create higher quality of life and better conditions that have improved health. Now, immunizations also play a big role in that, so I don't want to diminish that, but equally to that is how we're managing our environment. And I think that's going to be the key moving forward, how well we as a community, as a state or a nation can manage our environment and continue to grow in concert with that environment will improve the quality of life, not only for us, but for many generations to come. Now, in terms of what we're doing locally that we're really engaged in and proud of, one of the things is we've had at the Health Department of Sarasota an urban planner on staff for more than a decade. I think we're the only health department in the state that does that. That was by intent, because I learned a long time ago I'm pretty good with public health, but I don't speak urban planning language very well. And if we don't have someone that can do that and make sure we get our health concerns written into the plans, then it's hard to get anywhere. I'm proud to say Jane mentioned the comprehensive plan. Health is mentioned, health or health systems is mentioned over 280 times in our comprehensive plan. So we were very engaged in working with them on that. We also do a number of other things. One of those is working with children in child care centers to help teach classes to improve, we call it green child care, sustainable child care. So teaching those that operate child care centers how they can do things in a healthier way for their children and for the environment, and starting at a young age. Those are just two examples, and I'll be quiet now because I think we wanted some questions from the audience.
Sure, yeah. Also, we've talked, one common theme I think I hear a lot is the importance of collaboration and working together. I mean, obviously issues like climate change, water quality, those don't end at, municipal boundaries. I was kind of curious, are there obstacles to greater collaboration, and, how could we be working together better on some of these issues that you guys have outlined? That'll just get started, and then we'll go to the questions up here. For anybody.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think being here together is a good example of us working together. I recognize quite a few faces that are Manatee County. I didn't get into a lot of the details about things that we're doing, but I can tell you we're maybe a little behind in some areas, a little ahead in others. But we working with Sarah, working with Stevie, Lee Hayes, that actually I would come back with information and looking at the things that they were doing to share with my administration and my management, and they were like, okay, so let's try that. So we're doing the next thing and the next thing, and we I've been serving on the Manatee Clean Energy Alliance, and we hope to push out the Ready for 100. That's been longer than I would have liked to have happened, but there's always strength in numbers, and we know this, so yeah, continue working together. Sherry said this morning, I'm actually leaving for DC. Thank you all so much. It's been great working with all of you.
Let's have a round of applause for Diana's work at Manatee County. Seriously, she's been such a leader. We're going to miss her in this role, so thank you for all your work. Do you want to go to these?
Sure, yeah. So questions from the public. We say sprawl is an enemy of sustainability, but is prevalent in our county approach to development. Why is that, and what can we do about it?
Is that me? Is that a planner question?
I think so.
Okay, we can do both. Our comprehensive plan does have several goals to steer development and encourage and elevate and hold up the type of development that we want to see. So for example, redevelopment and infill in our urbanized areas, as well as the Sarasota 2050 approach of trying to concentrate development into villages and hamlets as opposed to 5 and 10 acre ranchettes. So that's an incentive-based program. It's not necessarily a requirement. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach. setting good policies and incentives to try and encourage what you do want to see, but as well you have to have community and developer desire to build that type of product.
I just wanted to comment that at least as I look at things from Sarasota County, we do a pretty good job of trying to preserve natural lands. And that's not saying we live in a perfect world. There's always a push and pull between how much to develop and how much to preserve, how much should be in the urban area, and how much is too much density, and all of those have positive and negative impacts on the health of our community. So it's always an interesting point for me to look at and think about where we're going and how we can best position our community from a health perspective to whatever that is for our community.
One of the questions here is, it appears there's some kind of replication between the different goals, between the different kind of municipalities and counties. So how do you avoid duplication of effort and spending, kind of money for doing study that might, kind of somebody across the line is doing the exact same thing?
That's a really good question, and one that we are very, very mindful of. And I can tell you personally in my work, a lot of times we're very strategic and say somebody will ask for us to develop a class on natural landscaping, and we'll say we don't do that. Sarasota County does that. IFAS does that because they fill a certain level of niche for certain things, and we fill work in different ways. And so I think the collaboration and relationship building that we have with the different agencies and really understanding deeply what each of us are doing and implementing is why we try to be mindful to refer our programs in different ways. And then the collaboration aspects that I mentioned earlier, we work with the Science and Environment Council, and we work just on a lot of collaborations so that we don't duplicate. We make sure that we're each taking a different role, but yet if we're working on a same project together, if we're working on it together, it can go further or go deeper in the community because we're collaborating on it. So that's a few thoughts I have. I see there's others though.
Yeah, and you will see some efforts internally that are very similar. So all three of us talked about internal energy goals, energy and water goals, and that's really important for economic reasons as well. If we can save energy and water in our buildings, it's going to be a lot less expensive for us. But like Stevie said, the collaboration is where we see our community work a lot of times. And we've been fortunate, at least recently, to partner on grant projects. So the additional projects I was talking about, the Partners for Green Places in particular, that is money that's coming from our community and national organizations. So whenever we have those additional projects, we're able to collaborate because we're getting grant money for it, and it just makes that collaboration and that project even more stronger if we can work together on it.
Jane, were you going to add something to that?
I was just going to add, I think we're blessed to have good regional partners, and part of the message that you have here today. Stevie talked about the vulnerability assessment that they've done in the city of Sarasota, and I touched on the report that Sarah and our other cross-departmental teams working on with that. We had an intern this past summer who is a graduate student that was able to look at all the coastal comprehensive plans from Tampa Bay all the way, I think, past Miami, to look at best practices to help inform us of what's going on in the communities so that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, and also make those professional connections so that we can share information.
Thank you. And for those that have set goals of going to 100% renewable energy, can you outline what have been some of the obstacles that you've encountered so far, kind of just getting going on those programs?
The state. Yeah, I would say that there's some of the strategies that we wanted to implement are not allowed in the state of Florida. For example, certain renewable energy investments like power purchase agreements as a tool for financing solar installations. Or our state doesn't have a renewable portfolio standards, which I think would help move some of the needle in that regard. So I do think that's a very real challenge, and something that we collected a lot of information on within the Ready for 100 of things we we wish we could do, but we couldn't. And then we filter that information to our elected officials to try to lobby and advocate for changes at the state level based on what we heard on those issues. So that's one obstacle. And then, you know, we're in a 30-year franchise agreement with Florida Power and Light. And so a lot of their investment decisions were at the whim of until 2040. And so working in a collaborative way, but also, and they've been at all of our Ready for 100 meetings, well, 5 out of 6, I would say. They've been present, they understand what we're trying to do, but there is, you know, a certain degree of limitations. So we're trying to be involved in what our investor-owned utility is doing. And then also, though, focus on what we as an organization, as a business unit at the city can do, and then what policies we can do to help residents and businesses install their own renewable energy and do energy efficiency. So there's kind of 3 different levels of points there: utility, our own city operations, and community-wide efforts.
Great, thanks. Chuck, there's a question about if you could outline maybe some of the health risks associated with climate change. I'm kind of curious, it kind of mentions here, I'm hearing about vector diseases. What are they and are they here? Locally, kind of what are the health impacts we're going to see from climate change, do you think?
Well, I think probably the biggest impact from climate change is the most obvious. That's just hotter temperatures. And, you know, you may or may not realize worldwide there's more human health impact to super warm climates and super cold climates, especially in areas that weren't prepared for that. When we have heat waves, especially in the north, like Chicago, Midwest area, usually there's huge impacts to life there. So heat is one area. Vectors, which for those that aren't up on that lingo, the bugs out there that transmit disease. There are certain species of mosquitoes that live in certain climates. Right now in Sarasota, I think we have almost 30 different species, and 7 or 8 of those are capable of transmitting diseases. As the climate shifts, we could see other species move into our area, so the risk could be greater, or we could see more if we have more rains. Those that know mosquito worlds know they need that water. So as the climate changes, we have to think about exposure to new vectors. And maybe a greater number of disease vectors to be concerned about. The other big factor that really has nothing to do with climate change, but everything to do with the discussion is the global world we live in, because it's no longer so much just what do we have exposure to in Sarasota. We also have to think about who's traveled anywhere in the world and picked up something that could be transmitted by one of our local vectors and come back home. And so that's one of our huge struggles on the health department side. You may or may not know, behind the scenes, every time a sample goes to a lab where some physician or hospital suspects one of those diseases, we're notified. And we immediately think about, do we have the vector for that disease, and what neighborhood is that in, and should we be trapping those mosquitoes and testing them for that disease, and all these things in the background that are going to increase our workload that are related to the way our society is changing and global warming.
Thank you. Question about why are we still building in high-risk areas like barrier islands, which are vulnerable to storms and sea level rise? Good questions.
So within our comprehensive plan, as I mentioned earlier, there are definitely sections that talk about guiding future growth in areas that are more sustainable. As well, I mentioned that we have a coastal disaster management section that talks about those coastal areas and being better prepared in those areas. It also talks about evacuation routes and planning for those in the future. That all has to be balanced with property rights as well. So those who have existing property rights and the ability to develop on that particular piece of property, or has a structure now and wants to change to a different one in the future, that runs with the land. So even if there are restrictions or guidelines and regulations about where are the best places to build, those rights still stay in place, and that's why you see things like incentives whenever you're trying to guide a certain behavior in lieu of restrictions and regulations.
I'm curious too about the question out here about the recycling programs. How has the move to single stream recycling affected the recycling programs in the cities and counties?
I wish Jeff was up here to answer this question almost, because the city of Sarasota went to single stream recycling this summer, or no, in April of this past year, and it has dramatically increased the amount of volume that we're receiving into the system. And this transition from what we were doing with the bin system to single stream is notorious for doing that and being good for increasing the volume, but notorious for increasing the contamination of what's put into it, because it's so easy. People just put everything into it. And so we put so much time, we received a grant, so much effort, and Jeff really hit the pavement, and a lot of other folks, and I know what the county is doing right now with their efforts as well, to try to educate on, yes, we're going to single stream, but don't put everything in it. And so we've had very good successful rates of little contamination in our single stream recycling. And so right now it's going very well, but it's one of those things that has to be continuously educated on, and something that I think we're going to have to just maintain that level of awareness on what it can and cannot be recycled in the new single stream system.
And I'll definitely refer you all to visit our Sarasota County Solid Waste Department, who has a booth back here. They're also having America Recycles event this Saturday. And there's also a My Waste app that if you're not sure what you can recycle, you can type it in the app, and it'll tell you if it goes in the trash bin or the recycling bin. But as you have heard, we are moving to single stream in the county as well. And just like Stevie said, the key is education. So we're going to be doing a lot of classes at both our extension office with our waste reduction agent, and then also solid waste is doing a lot of education. And I think having pictures on the recycling bins really helps that contamination as well.
Great, thank you. And last question, kind of just looking to the future, what advice would you give professional planners with little background in sustainability who want to go on to work in the field? Maybe share some advice, tips on how to improve your sustainability awareness for planners.
I would say look for opportunities to work cross-departmentally or look in different agencies. Feel free to stop by and chat with me after the session. I'd love to talk about your interest in our community and make professional connections with folks like those that are at this panel today.
Great. Well, thank you all very much.